AM 630.
Happy Friday, 8:07 with Brian and Brian on WMAL, 105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL, where Washington comes to talk.
And it's your last day here at the station, we should say.
Because I'm going to win Mega Millions.
Oh,
yeah. And then, I'm not going to show up on Monday.
That's sarcasm in case somebody out there wasn't catching that. It's not really his last day because he's not going to win.
But it will be once I win Mega Millions tonight, so actually it's not really sarcasm, it's the truth.
You're convinced you're going to win.
Doug SCHOEN joins us now, Democratic pollster and author of the new book, Hopelessly Divided, The New Crisis in American Politics and What It Means for 2012 and Beyond. By the way, going to be a book signing tonight. If you want to go and check out and see Doug, get your book signed, Politics and Prose.
I think it's
Saturday. I'm sorry.
At 6 o'clock.
Saturday tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. That's my fault. It's right here in front of my face. I'm too busy counting my money already, Doug.
Yeah, I got it. You and me both.
All right. So, hopelessly divided. A lot of people have hope because we are divided. Why do you say it's such a bad thing?
Well, because we have very serious problems on the debt, the deficit, employment, certainly health care. And, we're all Americans. And the fact that we are so polarized and we can't come together on our problems, I think, makes us a weaker nation, and that's bad whether you're liberal, moderate, or conservative.
Are we to a point then where we're only going to be able to govern when if it's the Democrats have all three branches and the Republicans have all three branches? I mean, do you see this going away anytime soon?
Well, I hope you're wrong, and I fear you're right. I think that the ability to negotiate is either very, very limited or limited to a crisis, and like the debt ceiling crisis last summer. So I fear that we are in a time where governance is almost impossible on a traditional bipartisan basis of the type we all grew up with.
Is it because of the economy? I mean, look, when things happen with money, then people dig in. If things get better, then there's more room for negotiation or more room for bipartisan support. I mean, if the economy does get better in the next couple of years, could you see an easing of people in their ways? They're just so entrenched in their ways and the beliefs of which way the country should go.
Well, I would say in Hopelessly Divided, what I sort of argue is that money has the slightly different impact, and I speak of campaign money, whether it be through super PACs or independent expenditures or large donors. And I say that money pulls the parties and elected officials apart. I was on a panel with John McCain this week, and he certainly made a similar point. And I would say that even in the Bush era, which was, relatively better than what we're facing now, certainly at least up till 2006, 2007, there was still all the partisan wrangling. So I wish I saw more hope as the economy turns better. Sadly, I remain pessimistic because of the polarization and the impact of special interests on a process that's increasingly out of touch with ordinary people.
I know what a lot of conservatives who are listening right now are thinking as they're driving in their car is that compromise and, the bipartisanship got us to this point. I mean, we wouldn't be here if all the compromise hasn't helped us at all. We're at this point because of bipartisanship.
I would tell you, having worked with Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich in the mid-'90s, we were able to leave the government in 2000 with a surplus and with a obviously balanced budget. So I'm very proud of that work. We passed welfare reform, the crime bill, a lot of initiatives I think conservatives, at least in part, liked. And I got to believe bipartisanship then benefited not only the country, but people who wanted to move the country more to the right than to the left.
All right, I got two questions for you. First is about the fact that we are a divided nation. I mean, roughly half people look at the world one way and the other half look at it another way. In this country right now, half the people pay taxes and half the people don't pay taxes. Right. There's a wedge right through the middle of our country, and it has not always been so polarized.
Right.
What has happened over the years to cause it to be more polarized?
Well, I think it's three or four things, Brian. First, I think it is, as I was suggesting, the impact of campaign money, super PACs, big money. The parties themselves are more ideological. Redistricting means that we get congressmen who are just from one ideological grouping. I think we also have an electorate, given the media, that pulls people in the direction of the left or the right. And frankly, we lack the one thing that you and I have talked about before, which is leadership, because I know you, Brian, extremely well, and I know that you are first and foremost a patriot, and it's one of the things you're justifiably proudest of. I'd like to think of myself the same way, even when we disagree, and we don't have leaders who are able to appeal to the broad national purpose to bring us together, given the threats that we face.
All right, so we need somebody who can do that, and maybe that person doesn't exist today. So my other question is, even though we are a divided nation, have you identified any areas where we all sort of do agree?
You see, I think the people agree much more than the politicians. There's no support for an individual mandate on health care. You know that, and certainly I know that. There were a bunch of initiatives, some of which are in the Obama bill, others of which are not, on health care that I think have broad support. I think there's broad support for reducing the debt and the deficit, reducing spending. I think there's broad support for an initiative that would try to reduce tax rates, eliminate deductions, and stimulate the economy. But we have no consensus in our Congress. Look at the only 35 votes or so for Bowles-Simpson this week. I thought this was all really a tragedy.
All right, let me just talk presidential politics for a while, because as we look at the Republican side of the equation right now, I have a very difficult time finding a pathway to victory for either Rick Santorum or Newt Gingrich. Do you, as a guy who understands this process as good as anybody on the planet, do you see a way that either of those guys could prevail?
No, I don't. I don't think they can prevail. I think each of them have their own interests. Santorum, I guess, has a vain hope of now, perhaps after calling Romney the worst Republican in the world, being his vice president. And Newt Gingrich has come up with his open convention strategy, which, as far as I can see, is nothing more than a strategy to keep Newt Gingrich relevant as long as he possibly can be relevant. So I don't see it. It only helps Obama. And in the ABC poll, Brian, as you no doubt saw, the Romney negatives are over 50%. Yep. That's not a good sign.
Yeah, well, speaking of leaders, though, do you see anybody out there? Can you pick anybody out there who is that guy who could lead, that could, bring Democrats on board if they're Republican, or bring Republicans on board if they're a Democrat?
I candidly don't, because as I think you both know, I've been equally critical of President Obama, and I don't think that he's fulfilled the mandate or indeed the vision that he set in 2008. I worked with a group called Americans Elect to try to put a third-party candidate, or an alternative rather than a third party, on the ballot. And sadly, people haven't come forward because our system is so bollocksed up that leaders from the business community, from the military and the like, have just not come forward. I just think we do better with more rather than less people in the system, and so far we're not getting it.
All right, Doug. It's always good to have you on. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you so much.
You'll be at Politics and Prose Saturday, 6 o'clock. The new book is called Hopeless.